feel free to take notes, but we'll send out some information after this as well. So thanks.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and I think I met everybody or know everybody here. Can you guys tell me really quickly, like what generation you are? Before we get started? Start here.
Hi, I'm Anna. I'm a millennial. I'm Heidi. I'm also a millennial. I'm Lisa. I'm Gen X.
Diana, Gen X, Louise, just a millennial. Like
And
you.
Malcolm, millennial.
I'm Laura. I'm Gen X.
Sue, Gen X, Colleen, Gen
X. Candace Dancer.
Mhm.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, it's just, that's what we do is we go to seminars and webinars. and
Is that what Gen X
That's how
does?
Gen X works.
That's a video.
Let's try to
funny.
evolve
Yeah,
together.
Like a Gen Z, I don't think will ever do this in their life. I don't know. I mean, it's such a different world. So that's great. Thanks for sharing that. I think, I mean, it is kind of, we're at a pivotal, weird point with our generations in the workplace. And I think a lot of you can experience that and have five different generations like Diana over at ACE in the workplace. And so I think it's important to understand kind of where they come from and what they want, because what Gen Z wants from an employer is a lot different than what I want and what I expect, and they work differently. So hopefully I can give you guys some kind of good tips and tools as we work through this. I did give you 3 handouts already, and the first one kind of is just a worksheet, and this is good for you and maybe your managers, coworkers to work through. You don't need to do it now, but again, I think it's important just to understand like what generations you have in the workforce, just so you can understand them. So you don't need to fill it out now, but it's just a worksheet for you to fill out later. And then this is just a snapshot, which I thought was pretty awesome, of the different generations and what kind of their characteristics are. Nice to have maybe if you're in HR on your bulletin board in your office, who am I dealing with today? And then I printed out just a snapshot of Gen Z and what they want. And I didn't do it for all generations. We'll go over all generations, but I did it for Gen Z just so we can maybe get ahead of it. And so we kind of know what's coming. I mean, they are in the workplace now. They're older than I thought they were when I last did this presentation, but they're there in the workplace. And so I thought that was just a good snapshot to have. And so it's interesting as we go through this, I'll talk more about this, but like Xers and boomers, I think used to always say, I'm bored, like to our parents. We would always be like, oh my gosh, I'm so bored. I'm so bored. I'm so bored. And our parents would always say, go outside and play, right? Go outside and play, figure out something to do. My daughter is 14, almost 14, Gen Zer. These Generation Zers don't know what it's like to be bored because they have their phones all the time and they're always kind of stimulated. So we'll talk a little bit about that and how that impacts them in the workplace as we move forward. I just thought that was kind of interesting. So the next slide, I have just some questions. Oh, you can go to the next slide, sorry. For your organizations, which is kind of the worksheet that I handed out. Just what is your generational composition of your current workforce? What is it going to look like in 5 years? That's why I kind of gave you the Gen Z, because that's what we're going to be seeing in 5 years. What does your customer base look like? If I go into ACE, I probably would be more comfortable going to probably a female, probably around my age, to help me if I needed help with something. Like customers kind of gravitate towards those people in their generations. So it's interesting to understand what your base is. And what's it going to be like in 5 years?
Is everybody else here an employer?
Oh.
I'm not, so.
Okay, great.
I work with job seekers and
Yeah.
employers. So I'm just trying to get an idea that everybody does hiring and retention and all that.
Yeah. But good question. Okay, next slide, please. So our perspective and values are shaped by the world around us during our formative years. So that's like birth through 16. Next slide. So the silent generation, I will need volunteers for this. So I do need 5 volunteers. You guys can either come up or give you a card or stay there. Back row. It's like, I know, well, that's
Pretty woman.
I know, well, that's what I did. Okay, so I'm gonna introduce to you George. So silent generation, we're not seeing a lot of these folks, I mean, because they're, you know what, like George is 78. I think maybe Diana, you have some of the older folks who have retired who are going back to work at
Yes,
ACE.
yeah,
So
yeah, we have a half dozen, yeah,
half a dozen,
maybe.
great,
yeah.
yeah. And that's kind of what George did. So George was born in 1945, and he's considered a good old boy. And on Saturdays, you can find him on the golf course that runs through his retirement community in Arizona, where he lives with his wife. And although he officially retired a decade ago, he spends most weekdays working at a business park less than 5 miles from his home. He was an engineer for almost 50 years. And he keeps telling his wife he's gonna quit because she wants to travel, but he wants to kind of stay involved. It'd be fair to say that he had 2 life partners, his job and his wife. He was known in the company as proficient, no-nonsense guy who could be counted on to get the job done. He worked hard, putting in long days and even an occasional weekend. If he committed to being somewhere there at 8 a.m., he'd be there at 7:45. He was shaped by heroes' catchphrase to make do or do without, sacrifice, be heroic. Consider the common good. His work ethic revolved around discipline, sacrifice, respect for authority, and delayed reward. His generation built the infrastructure for the way we do business still today. So even though you might not have a George, his spirit is there for every decision that the team makes. So some of the events that shaped that generation: World War II, the Depression, the stock market crash. So somebody has the card for the silent generation traditionalists. So if you guys can read what's on your, or if you can read what's on your card.
I have silent generation, so born before 1945. And you know you're a radio baby if how to entertain yourself when there's no TV. And you remember doing ballroom dancing instead of watching it on TV.
It's true. We all watch it on TV now. Thank you. Okay, next slide, next generation. Baby boom. We don't have any baby boomers here. So these guys, 1946 to 1960. So meet Patricia. She was born in 1950. She's 64. She has a strong national network of colleagues that support her personally and professionally. She's divorced, drives a zippy little new car. She goes to yoga. Her career means the world to her. She gives it her heart and soul, and her perspective was shaped post-World War II. And she heard messages like, you will make the world a better place. Be anything you want to be. The baby boomer report cards, maybe some of you guys have heard this, were graded on how well you got along with others. In 1967, Time magazine awarded the baby boomers Man of the Year, which is funny, charging them to end inequality, clean up our cities, and find a cure for cancer. A lot of hope with the baby boomers. Patricia helped develop vision and missions for her company, and she's taken seminars on everything they have, and they've served her well. They say like 1 in 4 baby boomers expect to work past retirement. So we're seeing more baby boomers working past retirement as well. So the events that happened during this generation: the birth control pill, the Martin Luther King speech, Kennedy assassination, Man on the Moon, Woodstock, those were some of them. And then who's our baby boomer person?
You know you are a baby boomer if you thought you might join the Mickey Mouse Club. You saw every episode of Leave It to Beaver. And you used a typewriter to write your top papers.
That almost went into my generation.
Yeah.
I really wanted to be on the Mickey Mouse Club. And so for baby boomers, it's like, how did you come from the hospital? A lot of baby boomers were like in the arms of their mother, in the front seat, with their parents smoking. And if their parents loved them, they cracked a window. And then if there were baby boomers in the room, I think one of the questions is, were you ever told you were special and unique? It did not sound like that. It said, what, do you think you're special or something? It was kind of turned around. And then Gen X. I can talk about Gen X all day because that's me. So I'll introduce you to Derek. And Gen X is like 1961 to 1980. These dates do fluctuate depending on kind of what you're reading. They won't always be the same. So it's just the way it is. So Derek, he handles issues and information quickly and efficiently. He's very straightforward and willing to offer his opinion no matter who the group is. He will gladly tell you he is not interested in climbing the ladder or paying his dues. He has a young family and outside interests galore, and he won't stay in a job that won't allow him time to do both. At work, Derek isn't the team player that Patricia is. As a child, he was alone in the afternoon playing Nintendo and Atari. He learned to take care of himself. Patricia is team-oriented. Derek is self-reliant. Patricia lives to work and Derek works to live. He's committed to his job and is a hard worker, yet he expects to see a light at the end of the tunnel. He's all about the life-work balance and not work-life. And these guys were referred to as the forgotten generation. There's been a lot of news recently about Gen Xers for some reason popping up, and they're saying it's kind of the forgotten generation. These generation, this was the first latchkey kids. So I was a latchkey kid. I remember going home after school and to an empty house and watching Gilligan's Island, and that's kind of how I grew up, you know, probably mid-elementary school forward. So very self-reliant. The events that shaped them: John Lennon was assassinated, AIDS, mass corporate layoffs, and the Exxon oil spill were a few of the events. There were a lot more than that. And then who has the Gen X card?
Gen X. You know you're a Gen X, or if you wore shirts growing up that had an alligator on the chest. You remember Atari and many hours of asteroids. You couldn't wait until 1999 to play the song 1999 by Prince. You know what a rotary phone is.
And then Dilbert. I think Dilbert was a big cartoon for Gen Xers.
I
Yeah.
was on the other side of the Atlantic for all that bit, so.
Yeah. But yeah, 1999 was a big deal
Yep.
to play that song by Prince. Boy, I don't even think my daughter would know what the heck I was talking about if I said that to her. Okay, and then the millennials. Gen Y. So these guys, they're between like 27 and 41-ish. And so I'll introduce you to Ashley. So when Ashley finished high school, she had a 10-year plan. She wanted to get into the right college, get a good job, work hard, move out her own, meet someone special, get married, and then maybe think about a family. She received her marketing degree at work. She's a very positive contributor, and she describes Derek as cynical and edgy. She wants her work environment to shape her values and ethics. She's bright and cheerful, full of confidence, and she likes to get involved in everything the business is doing. She likes to be involved in all aspects. Throughout her development, her parents and teachers encouraged her every step of the way. Her parents have been very immersed in her life and she in theirs. Messages she heard were: you are special, leave no one behind, connect 24/7, you can do it. And then a third of her life lived on the internet. So millennials, very community oriented, highest level of volunteerism in 40 years.
Oh.
And these folks were mostly brought up by baby boomers. And so their post-war experience in life was that everything was constantly improving. And everyone at that point was getting wealthier, new technology and products were constantly evolving. And they kind of instilled their belief into the millennials. 70% of the millennials believe that working from an office is unnecessary. They're determined to keep that same self-esteem movement going that their parents instilled in them. So they will be sure, and these kids are having kids, right? That their kids feel like one-of-a-kind snowflakes. Like that same type of way they were raised is what we'll see them raised, how they'll raise their kids. Some of the events that shaped them: 9/11, Princess Diana, and then unfortunately Columbine shootings. So that was kind of the beginning of that during this generation. Who's the millennial? Colleen.
You know you are a millennial if you've always had an answering machine or voicemail. You've considered piercing something besides your ear. The internet has existed as long as you remember.
That, you guys agree? The millennials? Millennials.
I guess it depends on side.
I
It depends,
think-
yeah, on like
Yeah.
internet existing, because some of us still remember like being a child and not having the internet.
Or it
Yeah.
existed, but you didn't have a computer yet.
Okay,
Yeah, like we still had to entertain ourselves as kids without it.
yeah,
That's the difference between millennial and Gen Z, I think.
interesting. Yeah, which will make a big difference in the workplace, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
All right, here we go, Gen Z. I'm like sweating, talking about Gen Z. And what I did with this presentation, so in prior presentations I've done for this, I had like a fictional character for my Gen Zer, and it was like 5 years ago I did this. I put my daughter in this one, so it's a little bit funky because she's not in the workplace yet. But I'm really trying to kind of relate to her and kind of how they all work and move through the world and how it might impact the workplace. So I don't have like a fictional Gen Z person in the workplace to offer to you. But I'll tell you what I think it'll look like when she gets to work. And I'll kind of tell you what I've been through a little bit. I think that her work world is going to be a lot different than what mine's been. I think she's going to want to like well, not just she, but everybody. I think this generation really wants to learn and continuously grow in the workplace. We have over at Big Agnes maybe 2 Gen Zers in the workplace, and I can just see that they quickly kind of get bored with what they're doing. They'll be hired for a job, they'll be doing it for 3 months, and then they'll want to do something else within the organization, which is awesome, but they just want to learn and grow. And I actually met with one yesterday, and she said, I want to learn and grow. And I want to kind of move through things. They're not going to be super happy like we were, just in one position day after day. So I think it's really important for employers to continue to grow and help them develop their career paths.
Do you find when they want to learn and grow that they're self-starters though?
Yeah, I think they're. Mhm.
I only have 2
Yeah.
now, but they're not self-starters.
Man, this Gen Zer that we
Okay.
have is amazing.
Yeah,
She is just comes in and works hard and is efficient, and
Mhm.
she's not a pain in the ass like the millennials.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean, she's not like in my office, seriously,
Yeah.
asking how she's doing or
Right.
asking to be rewarded because that's how they grew up.
right, yeah,
I think they're gonna want to be rewarded in a different way. They're gonna want to be rewarded regularly via their cell phone,
right, yeah,
via text.
Yeah.
They're gonna want, and I will talk a little bit about this. They'll want their performance to be via this computer regularly,
yeah,
just because
Yeah.
that's how they're grown up.
Yeah.
I dealt with that though, like on a crossover about that, the difference between like a crossover between millennial and Z and the self-starting and like thinking that we were giving this person this great opportunity to kind of put their stamp on the organization and create their own project and look at this year internship they were doing from not just a task list and a to-do list, but from how you will make an impact. And all 3 interns that we had over 3 years, like none of them took that self-starting,
Yeah.
motivational, like founding a program or founding an event,
Yeah.
or founding an exhibit, or just something really creative and
Yeah.
really fun and sort of that start, continue it through the year, finish, like celebration, like we cooked and potted and nothing.
yeah, that's what I found.
Tasks, great, like
Yeah.
take out the trash or whatever.
Right, yeah,
That's
yeah.
fine and didn't have to be micromanaged, but I do see that and I'm not putting it on everyone, but
Right.
that's where we've had some struggle is just really being like, hey, tell me. The
Yeah.
excerpt, tell me
Yeah,
what you see we need to do.
Yeah.
Give me your ideas.
Yes.
Start something, do something, and it's like, just a yes, no.
Yeah.
Like,
But-
so I would love some information, and I'm sure you will cover this at some point, just on how to really inspire people to, when there is creativity and flexibility, to take it. and do
Yeah.
it And like,
that's definitely something like
Like-
with those 2 in particular I struggled with. The millennials, I do not have a problem with it.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It's really weird.
And Diane, you have Gen Zers at ACE, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have from Y all the way to baby boomers, and then we have a small amount of the silent generation. But
Yeah,
yeah, pretty
but
even
there's
spread throughout the
Zers
others.
too. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. We'll talk a little bit about that. I do have some information about that coming on. These folks will, they say, have a lot of side gigs. Like they'll have a full-time job, but they'll also have like something else that they want to do on the side. And so they're saying it's really important for employers to like support that, and encourage it and not be like, you gotta be here 8 to 5 and, put in your 40 hours.
I think a little bit to that is, it goes back to like everything they see on social media and they're also the generation that's watching all these videos on how to do it yourself. But there is a point where they get to a realization that, it looks easy and I can think it, yeah, why wouldn't I be able to do that? But when you get to the reality of putting it in motion, I mean, it's like watching a video on like quilting and you're like, oh, that looks pretty easy. And then you start your first project and realize it is not. There's sort of that disappointment that you weren't just magically good at it, or you didn't take it and grab it and go to the end, to the finish line. And, they may be giving up too soon, or they may be realizing I wasn't ready for it. I spoke too soon, I wasn't ready for it. And I think in a way, it's also the millennial experience. And just like any of these, I honestly think that there's changes, as time goes by, there's changes there's always things that are like commonalities that will hold till forever. And then there's also gonna be changes like boomers, being told they're special and, and having that attitude then, transfer over to the millennial children. But then they get older, millennials are no longer children. And then we start seeing kind of like an opposite effect of, what do you think, you're special? And it's like, but you did raise me to think I was special. So I'm so confused right now. And we don't know what it's gonna look like for Gen Z, as time goes by and as we start, taking the lead, with them, and there might be like something good, a good shock or a bad shock,
Yeah, those are good points. Yeah, about the whole they learn things. They're definitely do-it-yourselfers and can figure out anything in a second on TikTok.
Yeah.
And
add to
Snapchat.
that too, they're also the generation growing up with YouTube sensations, like you can make money by being a gamer,
Being an
an
influencer.
YouTuber, yeah.
Yeah.
An influencer, and then
Yeah.
a lot of them don't realize it's not as easy as just setting up a camera and playing the game.
Right.
Well,
They have to work hard.
and not every single person who's watching can be an influencer, like there would be no influencers if we're all.
Right, exactly. Yeah, we should all be influencers. So something that she said to me, we were at Starbucks not long ago, a couple weeks ago, and they had a sign saying they were hiring baristas for like $23 an hour. And then she said, and I said, wow, that's, great starting wage. And she asked me what we hired our customer service reps at, per hour. And I said like 19 or 20. And we have 3 Gen X baby boomer male owners at Big Agnes. And she said, I would not work for 3 men for $20 an hour. Like, I mean, that's what's going to influence them to choose an employer. She goes, I might work for 3 women for $20 an hour. So she's already kind of thinking that, but they're going to go for employers that offer the diversity, that offer the sustainability practices. I mean, that's going to be what they look for. So it was interesting to hear her say that at 13, that was already kind of in her head. And then I think what's going to influence these guys a lot is AI, which we're barely kind of touching the surface of, is AI. I think they're going to be, I don't know how the educators are going to kind of manage this, but I think these kids are going to be doing a lot of homework with AI because it's like that. And it might have an impact on work. I mean, they need to tell us and train us on what we can do as far as technology goes to make the workplace more efficient and to run better. And they can do that. And I think they're going to make some big changes with that traditional way that we all have been running our businesses. I think this is the generation that's really going to make you have to change. So it'll be interesting to see for sure. It was, I went to the library to get books just to update me on this generation. And what was funny to me is you can't find books anymore. I was like, what the hell? So this is like freaking the only book they had in the library. It was written in like 2017. And it's a guy that does a lot of generation trainings with his Gen Z son. And they have a website. But I was like, all of the books were available, but they were all on Hoopla. And I didn't want something. I wanted a book I could flip through the pages and kind of reference it and not look at the computer. I couldn't believe it. And this is 2017. So like, we're there. Like, I need to change my ways, obviously, because I couldn't even find a book. Okay, so Gen Z, do we have a Gen Z
I
card?
usually have it. You know, your Gen Zer, if you referenced what you buy, listen to, look like, to what TikTok says, and perhaps where you work. Your primary mode of communication is Snapchat. You turn in your homework from your iPhone. Your parents always know where you are. Keep track of that.
Yeah, and so that's interesting too. I mean, my parents never knew where I was and they always said, go outside if you're bored. My report cards would come in the mail and my parents would get them. With this generation, I mean, I don't even know if it's good or bad, but I can jump on I did it this morning. I can jump on my phone and see what her grades are and if she has missing assignments. And so I can helicopter her. And which I do, and I probably shouldn't because she needs to do it on her own. But yeah, I mean, we're linked into their lives. They don't go outside without a helmet on to ride a bike. Nobody told me to wear a helmet when I rode a bike. So I know where she is. Yeah, I can track her at any time. She can track me at any time of the day. So they are definitely tracked. So we'll see kind of how that influences the workplace too. And then they have a high rate, they suffer from an intense fear of missing out on everything.
Mhm.
So FOMO is kind of big in their worlds, which is good because they might stay on top of trends and competition, but they're always going to worry, I think, that they're not moving ahead fast enough or in the right direction. And maybe that hence causes like this girl that I'm working with to move and learn in the workplace. And then they'd be interested in a situation where they could have multiple roles within one place of employment. So for this girl, this morning, we had a conversation with 2 department managers and we're going to give her a hybrid kind of schedule and have her work in 2 different departments because she wants to stay with customer service, but then she wants to work in our repair shop. So we're kind of working around what she needs to keep her happy because we really enjoy having her there. So I think that's what we're going to have to do.
Can you
As
talk a
employees.
little bit about how much, like, for instance, for those of us that might have 2 or 3 or 4, up to 4 generations, working, like, how much would an employer or an HR person like yourself be obligated to be sort of trying to accommodate all these different styles and all these different ways? Like, because I could see that if with you or your bosses really extra busy, you're trying to keep up with her needs and my needs and maybe the 60-year-old who's nearing retirement needs and, you know, like.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit about things like that in the slides that are to come, but I think it's really important. I think if you don't have like an HR person to be that person, then you're gonna lose people just for retention. I think you do need to take everyone's perspectives and like how they grew up, like their characteristics into account, and what their preferences are to keep them in the workplace. I really do, or they'll find somewhere else to go that might do that. And I know that's hard and very time consuming, but like we have such a hard time, we've had a lot of turnover, so I go out of my way to make sure somebody like her is happy, you know, especially if it's a star employee, but.
What's more expensive for your company? To spend that time in recruitment and rehiring and rehiring and rehiring, or to spend that time in retaining? So
Rehiring.
there's a little bit, it's
Yeah.
more expensive to
For
have to
sure.
do.
Yeah, it will be a lot more expensive if she leaves. And we have to try to find somebody to replace her, definitely. And then DIY, what we talked about, they're DIYers for sure. Okay, where are we? So we'll talk a little bit about managing the mix. So the workplace of the 50s, the executives kind of did the thinking, made decisions, passed them down, the workers carried out the plans. They didn't have a lot of say in the decisions, and they did most of the labor. The rank and status was based on their seniority and definitely was like age correlated. And employers typically moved up the ladder, just working hard, and their work relationships were very formal. It would be a lot of Mr., Mrs. There was a clear distinction between the boss and the worker. They didn't socialize, and their work life and family life were separate. They would leave the job and not really bring their family life into work. Very different than the workplaces that we all work in today. Their feedback back then was usually the most customized feedback was how often you were yelled at. So that was like the workplace of the 50s. You knew you weren't doing a good job if your boss yelled at you. And then baby boomers, by and large, they liked school, when they were kids, and so they continued to want to learn, like I talked about a little bit. As they grew up, they took a lot of classes, they got a lot of certificates. They wanted a workplace that was democratic, casual, and a lot of room for relationships, so they were a little bit different. They weren't as good at sharing as they think they are, the boomers. But like in service industries, hospitality, customer service, they tend to be really good at delivering service. They want to be liked one-on-one. They've learned to read people because they've had to, and they'll do what it takes to make a customer happy. And given their choice, they prefer to work for a manager if they can't be the manager who knows and cares for them personally. So that's when you're starting to kind of get into more of their family life, and they like it when you ask about their family life, the baby boomers. And then they needed a system to evaluate and rank them. This whole yelling thing didn't last any longer. And they wanted to know who could be promoted and who needed to develop more. And that's what created the annual performance review that we probably all continue to use. And then the Xers had a different generation towards work than the baby boomers, of course. They put kind of a new spin on it, and that was the work equals self-fulfillment. So I want to be fulfilled doing what I do. But they also learned during that time, in that generation that they grew up in, that there was no guarantee of survival. There were a lot of corporate layoffs, and they saw friends and people getting laid off. So they knew they could be thrown out of a job without warning. Their feedback, they wanted it even more customized and more qualitative. They wanted feedback that the manager talked to them, might have scored them and gave them feedback about how things were going. And they said once a year wasn't going to cut it. Like, we need feedback more than once a year. So that Xers kind of pushed back, asked for more, and most organizations did like a semi-annual performance review. And then for the Zs, again, it's all about engaging them. And engagements, it's more than just like communicating effectively. They want to be fully involved in their work. They want you to be involved in their growth. They want you to be involved in their lives. They want you to know what makes them happy and what they're passionate about. So a lot of collaboration, personal involvement to create that engagement. So they need to have a shared sense of belonging to the workplace and be a part of something important. I think if they're not a part of, or feeling like they're a part of something important, they'll get bored and they'll leave. These guys have an 8-second attention span, Gen Z. And so if you're training them, you need to train them differently than you would a Gen Xer. Like, this would not work for Gen Z. We would have to have a lot more collaboration, and we'd have to have, technology they'd have to jump on and zip, and then we would have to talk for 10 minutes. And I think the education system's behind on this, unfortunately, and probably will need to catch up quickly. Maybe by the next generation, there'll be more on it, but I feel like our kids in school today they get bored, and it's hard for them to actually have that attention span that they need because of the way that we currently teach, which goes back many years. So we'll see some changes with our education system. So feedback, these guys, like we talked, they're growing up with us tracking everything they do. And I think that's going to be all the way through college if parents continue to do that. So all of their school grades and school assignments were shared. The positive of that is parents can ask as mentors and remind them when assignments are past due. But these report cards are quick. Like, we know right away what's going on with them. And I think they're going to expect this in the workplace. I think they're going to expect that quick, instant feedback via cell phone or technology-based systems that track their progress. And then COVID, this is the generation that, we'll see. There's obviously an impact on every generation from COVID, but we're going to see long-term, and we're already starting to see it, what kind of impact that has on these. I think that the Gen Z, they're now in their teens, an event like COVID at an age like that, a sensitive age, is really going to shape their identity and worldview for years to come. So we'll see how that impacts things as we go. But these guys, they're growing up seeing school violence and violence almost daily. It's like norm to them. Whereas like for our generation, and still, it's just like, oh my gosh, it's just intense. So that's how these guys are growing up. So social connections, we'll talk a little bit about like how the person next to you wants to be communicated to. So like the way I grew up, I want to just talk to somebody. The next generation grew up in a digital age, so they're going to want to speak social. That's kind of how they have grown up and what they want to do. So the companies don't have ideas, but people do. So what motivates the people are the bonds, trust, and loyalty that develop within each other. What matters is that it's the connection, the social capital, and that reliance and interdependency that builds the trust. That's going to keep the companies having momentum moving forward. And so communication, that's some of the communication, like how best does the person next to you want to be communicated to? Again, like, am I dealing with X, or am I dealing with baby boomer, am I dealing with a Gen Z, or how do I need to communicate? Like if you're managing people in hospitality, I remember talking about this back when I worked in hospitality. I would say to the housekeeping manager, you need to be texting your employees their schedule, like every day. That's how they want to receive the information. You can't just post it on a bulletin board and have them come look at it. You also need to kind of text them. And I remember him saying, I don't want to do that. I don't have time to do that. But that's, again, how they want to be communicated to. So a place like ACE, with all of the different generations, there's a lot of different ways to communicate to them. And that's a lot on the managers to take that into account. Like, how does this person want to be communicated with in regards to their work schedule, in regards to their performance evaluations, you know, all of that. I don't think it's a one size fits all. So I do think you have to take the time or have the people in the organization to help guide you as to what to do. And then motivation, you know, how are these people motivated and what's going to motivate them? And then the leaders create the conditions to encourage everyone to do their most creative thinking together. I think everybody from each generation needs to have a seat at the table. So like if you have group thinks or group meetings or committees or things like that, I think like I would typically like invite Gen Xers to the committee, but it's important to invite somebody from every generation so you can get feedback as to what they're thinking about whatever the committee is. So to have a seat at the table for every generation, I think it's really important. What's next? And teamwork. Yeah. Again, have all of those different generations, maybe have like a baby boomer mentor, a millennial, or, you know, they obviously are going to work well together, or have a Gen Xer mentor, a Gen Zer. I think that's a great idea for new hires. Throw them in and through the training process, have them mentor somebody from a different generation, learn a little bit about it. So this is the history, the bones, the foundation, and where you've been, kind of where we all got our values from. And then this is where we're going. These are the people running your organizations while you're here today. They're probably doing awesome, right? They're doing a great job. So communication with each generation, do unto others, keeping their preferences in mind, like we talked about. Communication with the silent generation would be formal. And this, I thought about this morning. I was like, oh my gosh, if my daughter ever like works with somebody from this generation, they're not going to know what she's talking about because they talk in abbreviations and I don't know, they're not super polite. Or maybe she's not. I don't think she would ever say Mr. or Mrs. or so hopefully these two generations don't. I'm sure that the silent generation is just like, what are these kids saying? If I'm saying that, I'm sure they're thinking that even more. Usually with the silent generation, clear grammar, no slang, no profanity. Explain to them the company message and the long-term company goals. The baby boomers, it's more personable, like we talked about. Mutual interest. How is your son? Have them participate, making that connection. And they want to be included in what's going on in the organization. Gen Xers, and this is so me. Work to live. Don't waste my time. Be direct and straightforward. Like I hate small talk at work. It drives me crazy. Or if somebody can't give me the answer I want, like right away, they just keep rambling on and on and on. And just like, I got to go back to work. Just get to the point. So that's very much the way I want to be. And email communications, clean, concise information about what you want for Gen Xers. And then Gen Y. send text messages or meet face to face. They want to meet face to face. Give them personal goals, avoid sarcasm. Gen Z don't communicate the same as Gen Yers, and they do have a desire to be taken seriously in the office. So Gen Zs believe it's going to be difficult to work with baby boomers because they fear they'll be treated like children from their older colleagues. Probably so. And they tend to be weak writers because of all of their abbreviations. They're not very solid writers, and I'm learning readers, like they're not reading, which is really interesting. Like that's why there's no books. Like they don't read. Well, they do, but it's all on this. Yeah. It's very interesting. And then I think I have, let's see what the next slide has. Yeah, I think it's coming up. So motivators for silent generation, words that motivate, your experience is respected here. Rewards, tangible symbols of loyalty and commitment and service. And then actions that motivate, I can't read this. Managers connect their actions to the overall good of the organization. So that's kind of the whole silent generation. And then motivators for baby boomers, we need you. You can make a difference. Rewards, they personal appreciation, promotions, recognition, status symbols, and management actions, get them involved, show them how to make a difference with baby boomers. Gen X, do it your way, which I love. Free time, which I love. Upgraded resources, opportunities for development. So, I mean, certificates, Gen Xers, trainings like this, I think Gen Xers all really still enjoy. And management actions are to give them choices and let them work alone. I have never wanted to be a part of a team, and the typical Gen Xer doesn't. They kind of want to work alone, I think. They don't want to kind of team build and go through that whole team process. And these guys, the baby boomers were the ones that set the missions and the visions for the organizations. And then millennials, we respect you. What are your goals? Rewards that motivate, awards, certificates, evidence of credibility. Actions, managers connect their actions to their personal and career goals. Okay, and this is where I got, from my one book that I found. So with the Gen Zers, like, I mean, your work here matters, of course, your ideas matter, but then these little abbreviation things, I add some words, like lit, lit is a big deal. It describes things that are awesome, right? And so my daughter, like, I just don't understand how they talk. She was, she like last week started dating this boy, and he asked her out, and they've never even had a phone conversation as far as I know. It's all on Snapchat. And so she was like in the car while he was asking her out, and it was all abbreviated, every conversation. And then he like asked her out, but it was abbreviated. And then she said yes. And then he said lit. The whole thing was just like, I kept saying like, what does this mean?
Maybe would that be like their way to sort of codify communication, given that their parents are tracking everything?
Maybe.
So that the parents don't accept, because I think I read somewhere that, kids were starting to use these terms that their parents didn't know so that they can, do bad things. And
I think it's just their quicker way of snapping.
yeah, that's like
I think
culture.
it just makes everything quicker. Yeah, I mean, this is such a small snippet of, like, their whole sentences are all ALGLITRN. And so I'm like, what does that mean? They don't spell anything out, hence they can't be good writers, or they won't be good writers, or they're gonna want to do this. It's all like this. Everything is lit.
It's funny how like that, like some of these acronyms have progressed from the millennial generation. Like lit was like, we use that word, but it was like, we're gonna get lit.
Like drunk.
Yeah, like party.
Yeah.
And like lit now is just like lit, like cool, like good.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
funny.
That's what actually a Gen Xer was at my house the other day, and I think Maya said something to her about it being something being lit. And then she said the same thing. She goes, in my generation, that was getting drunk. Okay. Okay, so these guys, they're 32% more likely to leave employers. So we'll have to, if they're not like engaged and, you know, growing within it. And then I just had a little bit of COVID stuff. They said that Gen Z were significantly more likely to mention COVID-19 as evidence of how the company could have done better for employees. They were 78% more likely than millennials to say that. So they didn't feel like employers did enough for employees over COVID. They were 160% more likely than Gen X and 183% likely than boomers as far as that went. I remember going through that. We lost a couple of employees. They weren't Gen Zers. They were probably Xers because they didn't think we did enough over COVID.
I lost a job.
What were they expecting? Did they tell you what they were expecting?
No, I mean, I think at that time it was so overwhelming to them that I don't think anything would have been enough. Because, you know, we didn't know what they were expecting or how to appease them. We were just trying to keep the company going and keep people employed.
I left a job in healthcare. But I gave enough time in the sense of, I asked for, I mean, I started seeing Ace Hardware have plexiglass and everywhere you went, there's plexiglass. And I gave it a verbal like, hey, can we do this in April? May, June came around, nothing. In July, you know, I had put it in writing as well in July, nothing. And so that was an answer in itself. Of we're front facing and people are removing their masks and coming straight up to us. And
So yours was safety, but yours was probably more in terms of.
it was very specific. We're seeing it possible everywhere else rather than, and you would think a healthcare clinic would. And my difference, but had I been Gen Z, I would have been like, I'm out, walked out the door and said, I asked for this 2 weeks ago and you didn't, but I gave it like 3 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was gonna say on that one, that I personally don't find them like massively reflective, or when we sit down and like, okay, so this is what you're asking of me, like, how would you like to see that change? And they're like, I don't know, I just expect it done. I'm like,
I do have
Yeah.
to,
okay, but we're in a small organization, like, can you be part of that? So don't find them like reflective on like, okay, so this was a problem or whatever, like, we like to sit down and like figure out how can we do it, or how would you like to be part of that? And they're like, where's my plate?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well.
It just doesn't seem
Yeah,
Gen
Um,
Z when it comes to situations like that.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to like defend them forever, but they're
Yeah.
also still in that age group that their prefrontal cortex
Right.
isn't
True.
quite there yet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know, anyone, I mean, it stops developing at 25, right? So
Right.
we are looking at that.
yeah, as well, it's just
Where-
a generation.
A lot of these things, like they're very honesty, they're not, you know, they're very honest, they're saying things that slip out of their mouths that are gonna get them in trouble, the filter, all those things, they're, to some degree, they're very tied to.
Yeah.
That, which one day will solidify, and I think they'll get to a point where they'll reflect on
Yeah.
who they were and how they acted during that point and what it led to.
Yeah, and to be fair, I also
consequences.
find that with like
But what-
millennials and stuff with the COVID thing and being
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
how would, if you were an employer and the bottom fell out of your business,
Right.
how would you have managed it different? You know what I mean, when we're having that conversation, and a lot of them would have obviously ideas of how we manage it different, but
Right.
sometimes they're like, actually, I don't know, I probably would have just hit in a hole too.
Yeah.
Or whatever, you know, there's
Yeah.
that, but I
How
think,
any of us have managed it.
Right, I don't
And
know.
hopefully we never go through that again.
yeah,
But it's interesting how they.
my
there's
son said,
criticism.
Mommy, when it was COVID in your lifetime? Yeah, this happened like once.
Oh,
He was
wow.
he's
That's
not-
crazy.
Yeah, I was like, no, this doesn't happen like every generation.
Yeah, hopefully not.
We
Yeah.
don't know, and we don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, historically, I was,
Hopefully.
I was like, every generation has had something, but.
Well, I was just gonna mention too, I think a lot of people were feeling they needed a fresh start after COVID, like no matter
Yeah.
what job you were in, you probably had some trauma.
Yeah.
You had a lot of friends laid off or whatever it was, and there was just a lot that happened, and then you just kind of wanted to like move on.
Yeah.
The great resignation.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think is, we've come out of, right? I hope, because that was rough.
I want to just make one comment on Gen Z. I think one of the things that we're dealing with, and you hit on it with the self-starting, is with so much reliance on the phone, with so little writing, with sort of not as much, time or because of all the stimulation. Yeah, I've been reading quite a lot about how, we're losing an entire generation of artists, writers, poets, painters, because there's no break in the stimulation to then get into various other parts of your brain that would actually create the art of our future. Now, it's not to say there can't be some things that happen on computers and phones. I'm not saying all art is dead. But that idea, like you said, when there was a downtime, you went outside, probably found some bugs, you built a tree house that had a whole fantasy world that created from nothing.
Right.
And that boredom and that lack of boredom. And so children just go look at them in the mirrors, everything struggle and wonder how this will play out in the work setting. And how we really reinforce creativity, pausing, boredom, breaks. This thing goes, in a basket for 2 hours tonight.
Sorry.
To make sure.
Yeah, it's a good stuff.
Sorry. One person on emergency breakthrough calls for that.
Be a little bit more flexible. So
Yeah.
that we're not saying, this is what we gotta do to motivate
Right.
Generation Z. You can say, yeah, I'm Generation Z, but I also learned from the other generations and can come in and learn them a little bit to help a workplace rather than the HR person having to do everything for me, work for me. So that's kind of the generation I'm trying to raise, but I don't know if that's even
If
realistic.
it's possible, yeah, I know, it's hard. We have at our house, like, we had a 7th grade end of year party last year, and I had like spike ball and a volleyball net and a trampoline and like every possible activity you could have for 15 kids or whatever. And they came over and it was raining, but they were outside for 15 minutes.
And then on their phones.
And then they were all like a heap of kids on the couch on their phones. So I want them outside doing stuff, and they want to be together giggling on their phones, but that creativity thing is scary. I got chills when you said that.
Yeah, and I really worry, and I
Yeah.
worry too for our businesses, and I worry too, obviously I'm in the creative sector, and so I worry for the creative sectors, really what is the world that we're creating. We do think some of our greatest things about society have come from arts and culture, and so if we're losing that due to technology or that need to be entertained 24/7. I think we're in some real trouble. So.
Yeah.
I do want to add one
It's gonna
thing.
be different.
I actually have a 15-year-old who loves to write.
Good,
So I know that it's completely lost, but
Yeah.
I do think that it's shifted. It's not out of boredom and creativity. Now it's all these other influencers saying
Yeah.
this is what's out there, and that's more what they kind of cling to.
Okay.
But,
Interesting.
yeah, so
That's great. Yeah.
I wanted to.
See, there's hope.
Yeah, because like in high school, you can start a club, it's like the no phone club, you just need to get together, right?
Which I think they will. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that'll happen for sure.
Yeah.
I hope so.
I also think like just from I coach volleyball for Gen Z, right? So I coach 8th graders, 7th graders, I coach high schoolers. And I have become a better coach and a better leader because I am learning from this new generation. So when I think about my management style or my leadership style or my teaching style, it's changed in the last 10 years from when I started coaching. And the way that I coach kiddos who are now graduated from college is not the same way I'm coaching this next generation. And so for me, I feel like I have become a more well-rounded educator and coach, a more well-rounded manager, because I've had to adapt and learn new ways and styles and techniques of connecting with people. And so I don't think the onus falls on like, well, why does the onus have to be the HR person who adjusts? But like, it's made me better, honestly. Like I am able to teach in ways that I never thought I would be able to, because I've learned and I've grown. And so I think that is like a mutual thing, right? So just as they're learning something from me, I'm also learning from them. And so I think if you can approach your management style with that openness of, yes, I'm here to teach you how to do a job, or I'm here to lead you, I'm here to help you grow, but also you're here to help me grow, right? And I think every generation has had to do that.
And my favorite managers that I've had, like some of my favorite mentors are mentors who have also done that, right? Who have appreciated learning from me. And so I think sometimes we come at it closed. Why do I have to be the one to adjust to your style? Instead of being like, how about we learn from each other?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's great feedback.
So we're just looking for more open to that approach.
Which what?
The education.
I know, me too. I was thinking that too.
Because that's kind of, the basis.
Yeah.
And then parents and fostering that, that love for writing, it's like giving that opportunity to your daughter is great. And, and making sure that, that stays, that's kind of between education and parents.
Mhm.
That's the basis.
Maybe it starts with the coaches.
That's what
Maybe
we're
it
talking
starts
about.
with, like in Pelica, where
Yep.
you can come back to the administration, talk about that, and that becomes maybe a professional development thing that the teachers have on
Yeah.
something just.
I think we'll see changes, but I think it'll be the next generation.
And
I think
it's-
the years are
I
gonna
don't
be
think we
so.
move it
hard,
fast
right?
enough.
Yeah, it's not fast.
The curriculum is so closely monitored that it is hard to change curriculum.
Mm.
So schools is challenging, but it can be easier to change quote unquote curriculum in a nonprofit or in a workspace, right? Like you are the ones developing that. And so what does your onboarding process look like? Like, are they bored or is it something fun and engaging, right? So I think those are ways that I've had to adapt and like the old binders I've had and the ways that I've used to coach have now shifted, right? And so, I enjoy that because as I grow up, I think I've become a much better coach today than I was 10 years ago.
Mhm.
Because
That's
of the kiddos that I've had to coach.
That's lit.
Lit.
All right, so let's see, I think we only have like 8 minutes left. But we're almost done. This is just I printed that out for you guys. I thought that was a really good snapshot. And then 12 best practices, which we've already talked about a lot of these. One of them was like keep conference rooms free of cell phones. As we're talking about, study generational composition and use the information in your growth, leadership, parenting strategies. You could encourage note taking on paper instead of computers. I don't know. I feel like Maya in 8th grade or note taking. I think they do everything on computer. I think everything is on. She turns in assignments on her phone. It just kind of blows me away. I'm like, how is that possible? Match workforce to customer base. We talked about that. Include all generations of boards. We talked about that.
So Karen, my daughter just ordered a planner,
Yeah.
but she is more likes the written, and she takes notes. She has a calendar that she fills out of all the activities. She's 23, so she's older than her daughter, but I think some of these things are not, they're not as dire as it seems like it's going to be, like the attention span. Sometimes she'll tell me to get off my phone.
Yeah.
And, and I think that's a good sign,
Yeah.
that she's cognizant
Yeah.
of the downfall of sitting there, just endlessly scrolling.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's just different. It's
Yeah,
just
it's
different.
My
Yeah.
15-year-old told me to get off my phone.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's great. I mean, it's different. I think it's gonna be great to have them in the workplace. I think they're gonna really shift things the way that they should be shifted. I think it'll be very positive, yeah. Support continuing education, which Gen Z is gonna want, for sure. Reward managers for retention. That's always a good thing. Reward performance regularly and productively. Millennials and Gen Zers want to.
Can you talk a little bit about what you do in terms of that? I've told our folks, how do you work?
Yeah.
What's your best
Yeah.
thing that says great job? And it, says words of affirmation, money or gift cards or different things like
It's-
that. But the salaries are set.
Yeah.
And benefits are set. So what have you found are your best things to reward
It's
people?
so funny because it's so hard and there's so many different people want to be rewarded so differently. We went to like quarterly written checkup reviews. So we do a little check-in every quarter. The managers do it. We do merit increases once a year, which the younger generation isn't that thrilled with. We last week gave this millennial guy promotion mid-year and gave him a 4.2% increase. And he emailed me that night and said he wanted a 15% increase. He said he'd been doing the job and he had proved he had done the job and he wanted a 15% increase. And so I was just like, wow. I mean, I guess you gotta like go for it, but. whew. And we worked really hard to give them the 4% mid-year. So, and then a lot of the millennials kind of just like walk into your office and just say, how am I doing? You know, they'll just kind of do it. So it is kind of individual generational based thing.
So sorry.
Yeah, I know you guys have to go. Well, and this is pretty much, we have like 12 different practices.
I
And then-
just, I have to run too, but we do have tools at the workforce center for you as employers. Either it's screening or evaluation tools. We have an assessment for like values where an individual can pinpoint what their own, like, how do I want to be rewarded?
That's great.
And, pre-screening, certain questions that you may not be able to ask in an interview, like how do you collaborate with multi-generations? We could do some of that. And then, we also have learning tools, with communication, email etiquette, all those things. And we do have a way to do the nano version of those tutorials for the short attention span individual.
Yeah,
So I'll leave my card here, because there is a way to, like you said, it's more expensive to recruit and retrain and rehire and all that than it is to find ways to make it work with your current hires. And if you're struggling to get ideas on that, give us a call and we'll pinpoint something.
yeah, good. You guys always have great. Thank you. So we'll run through the last couple of ones, offer movement, Gen Z, we'll see that a lot. And then. There we go. We did that one. Time for succession, that's gonna be important. Mentoring programs, we talked a little bit about that. Flexible scheduling is gonna be important for sure, I think with everybody from Gen X on. And then benefits, attractive benefits above and beyond, maybe medical, dental, vision. Is what they're gonna want. I mean, we do a ton of that. We do paid company camp out trips. We're doing a happy hour today. We're always like, we're hiking a portion of the CDT trail next week as a company. The organization's going out and doing a little day hike and stuff. And so we definitely try to offer things. Thank you very much. And then there's one more. We'll see if it works. Video? Yeah, it's a video. So it was supposed to be. So this was, and I don't know how, well, I think everyone probably know, this was like the introduction to the Jetsons. So it was just like the little 10-second blurb, meet George Jetson. Yeah, his son Elroy. It's that little thing. Or his dog Elroy. Well, see, good. Yeah. I don't know, Gen Zers would not know what I'm talking about. With all of us flying around and like, that's kind of where we're at, that's our future is we're kind of the Jetsons, is what we're seeing out there. So it's just kind of a fun snippet. So sorry it didn't work. Yeah, I think that's it. You guys, thanks for your participation. We could stay here all day and talk about it. Yeah.
It's cultural anthropology.
Yeah.
I'm gonna really quick before everyone scatters, just thank Karen again and again, thank all of our sponsors, our presenting sponsor, Mountain Valley Bank, the Employers Council, Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, and Northwest Data Services. And this is a part of a larger business education series. So we have like a grant writing session coming up later this fall. So if you're interested in learning, we have a couple of professional grant writers coming and how to write those. We also have like a lunch and learn series. So there's just a lot happening. If you have any questions, please reach out to me or CC Mortar for more information. And thank you guys for being here. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.